What is up, harvesters? Welcome back to my subscribers, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Ken. So today I want to talk to you guys about everything red osier dogwood. So I talk a lot about red osier dogwood. I mean, this is only going to be applicable to those of you who can grow it in your area, but if you can, it is awesome. But a lot of this stuff's going to apply to whatever shrubs you can get to grow in your area. So, all right, I have a lot of experience with red osier dogwood. I have tried everything I think there is you can do. I've clipped them, I've put them in root growth hormone, I've put them in a greenhouse, I've tried to plant them that way, I've tried just clipping them, sticking them in the ground, I've tried everything, transplanting them, I've done everything. So I want to get into like what has worked best for me and what I think is probably the fastest, easiest, and cheapest way to get these growing on your property as soon as possible. And so for those of you that don't know, the advantages of red osier dogwood is that they are a thick cover, so you can use them for screening, you can use them to cut down on those sight lines, you can use them to create bedding areas, but you can also use them just for browse. So right now, I was just out on my southeastern Wisconsin food plot now, and I was checking out the edges, which is where I have a ton of red osier dogwood, and they are all like nipped off. The deer have been browsing on them like crazy. Now it is of course February. We just got about 9 inches of snow about a week ago. A lot of that other natural food in the woods is covered in snow. They can't get at it. They are pounding my food plots and pulling those brassicas out of the ground and eating on those right now, so that's great. But they're also browsing on those red osier dogwoods. That's what you're really trying to do, is give them that extra food that's going to get them through this last part of the winter so that you maintain your herd into next year. You're not going to lose your fawns, and those does that are pregnant, they're going to hold on to those ones they're pregnant with, and you're going to end up getting more deer next year by having this type of stuff on your property. So, all right, let's get into how we're going to actually do this. So if you can clip your own red osier dogwood clippings, awesome. This is going to be really easy and really cheap for you. So what you want to do though when you're clipping them is make sure you're clipping them at like a 45-degree angle so that there's almost like a spear to like stick into the ground easier. It also helps the roots start to grow a little easier as well. Now, I tried growing these in buckets of water with a root growth hormone. Now, if you're wondering what one I use, I'll link it down in the description so you can check it out. But otherwise, I think I found it at just any garden center or whatever has it as well. But what I did was I put these clippings in a 5-gallon bucket, filled it about 2/3 of the way with water, put the root growth hormone in there, and I actually stuck them then in a greenhouse, which maybe wasn't the best thing to do, and I'll explain why. But so they boomed right away. As soon as they got in that greenhouse, those roots shot out, the tops of them started to stick out buds, and then all of a sudden they just dried up into nothing. Well, what I think happened was they actually got too hot too fast in that greenhouse, and that greenhouse almost baked them in there. They are a plant that likes wet feet. That means to have their roots in like marshy area. Now the problem with that is that I think those marshy areas tend to be a lot cooler at night than that greenhouse was, so they kind of got baked in there. Now the other thing that I've tried that worked a lot better is same thing, put them in a 5-gallon bucket, put root growth hormone in there, and I stuck them in like a shady spot behind my garage at home. They actually did much better in there, not having that extra heat and sun baking on them coming from that greenhouse. So that greenhouse is awesome for getting my plants for my garden growing in the spring, but apparently not for red osier dogwood. So maybe I just needed to adjust where the greenhouse was a little bit. Maybe I needed to open up the vents, maybe get some more air in there. I don't know. I don't know that the greenhouse doesn't work. I just know that whatever I did that time didn't work. And maybe you can adjust. So if you guys have tried to get them growing in a greenhouse, leave me a comment down below. Leave everybody else watching this video a comment down below so that they can maybe learn from your experience with trying to get them established in a greenhouse. But I did see success just trying to get them growing by letting them sit outside in more of like a natural weather of like the natural light of the day and then the natural like heating and cooling of the day. And so that was great and awesome, but guess what? It was not the most efficient way to do it. And the reason for that is now that I got all of those little root strings starting to come off of those red osier dogwood clippings, I couldn't just shove them in the ground anymore, or I would have ripped all of the root right off of them. So I had to actually go out and like dig a little hole or just use like a little stick or a little pole to like open up the ground enough to put them in, which ends up taking a lot longer than just clipping them and shoving them straight into the ground. Now, the difference is though, 100% of the ones that I did that had roots on them grew. Like I may have lost one or two, or I don't know. It was hard to tell, but for the most part, all of those are actually still growing. The ones that I just clipped and plugged straight into the ground, I got about 50% growth off of those. So even though it's a lot faster to just clip and plug, you're going to lose about half of those. So you're going to have to do twice as many as you think you need. But it's a lot more work and a lot more investment because of the root growth hormone and the 5 gallon buckets if you don't have them and whatever. More effort having to put them in the ground that way and whatever also. So just whatever you guys want to do, like I did a mix of both. I was like, I'm just experimenting with this. I'm going to do both. We're going to see what happens. And they both were successful in their own way, but pick whatever is going to be easier for you. Now, there is a third thing that I did, and that was that I actually transplanted full mature red osier dogwoods. Now, how they grow is kind of crazy when you like look at them, look at their root structure. So I was only able to do this with a very select few of them that were kind of like out of the bunch of the big bunch of red osier dogwood. But all of those that I transplanted are also doing very well. I also transplanted a few box elders that way as well. I did have a buck decide he wanted to rub one of those raw, so hopefully that one still survived, but it maybe didn't. We'll see this spring if it comes back or not. But you can just do this, get as many in there. I don't think there's a rule for how tight they can be. Put as many as close together as you want. Like I said, if you're going to just plug in the clippings, you're going to lose about half of them anyway. So just get as many in there as fast as you can. Get some transplanted ones in there. Get some that you start in root growth hormone. If you want to do it like I did, awesome. Like for those of you that watch my videos, I'm trying to get like the middle of one of my food plots to have like a bit of screening and browse in there. So I'm trying to like fill that area in. We're going to see how it does this year. This will be its now second year coming out of its first spring in that new area. We're going to see how they do, but I'm going to fill in with some more here. We're getting close to red osier dogwood season here. You always want to clip them when they're dormant before spring green up but you need to get them in the ground too. So you need to do that after the frost is out of the ground, obviously. So as soon as that frost is out of the ground, go clip those red osier dogwoods. Go stick them in the mud. Put your muddy boots on because it's going to be muddy while you're doing this. It's going to be that time of year. But you want to get as many in there wherever you want thick cover, wherever you want to cut down on those sight lines, wherever you want to create bedding. Now, red osier dogwood does like wet feet, like I said, but they will grow where they're not like in a swamp, but you do kind of need to babysit those a little bit more. I just took like a 5 gallon bucket and I threw some water on all of them just to get the ground at least wet where I put them in. But a lot of them did take off, even up like a little bit out of the swamp where I pulled them out of. And I do have some growing just naturally on some higher ground on the side of my one food plot. So they will grow outside of those wet areas, but it is a lot easier to get them established in those wet areas. But the last thing you need to consider is their competition. So if you're trying to plant these and all of the native grasses just like spring up and choke them out, that's going to be a problem for you. So you got to do kind of what you want to like choke out that other stuff. Some guys will just lay plastic down and just plug in their red osier dogwood to make sure there's zero competition. Some guys might spray with like glyphosate the year before to try to like kill off everything so that they have like barren ground to try to plug them into. I honestly didn't do any of that. I plugged them in, and because of where it was like in the middle of the food plot, I kind of just let it go, because even if the native grasses popped up, those would also act as that screen for me. So I was more worried about the screen than the red osier dogwood per se that first year. And a lot of them survived. We'll see how they get into this spring, but I'm not worried about it. I am going to go fill it in thicker. I'm just going to plug more in there. I'm going to always continue to do this, just continue improving every year, year after year. And so I think if we can do that, if we can get these red osier dogwoods successfully into these areas, you're going to cut down on those sight lines, which awesome. That's great for this habitat improvement stuff. and you're going to create more browse for those deer, which is awesome too. You're going to get them through the winter. You're going to have more deer to hunt the next year. So if you guys feel like you got some value out of this video, go ahead, hit that like button, leave me a comment below, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.